Okay, it's another episode of the Next Fix podcast where we like to dive in to comeback stories and people dedicated to the overall betterment of the human condition, right? Today we've got Brandon Yager. And so he, from what I can gather, he works very closely with our subconscious and personal development and things like that. But I want to welcome you to the show, Brandon. How are you living, my friend?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Yeah. Brandon's energy is like way more like cooler than mine. So I'm gonna try to be I'm gonna be a little bit more suave, although that's not really my cup of tea. But so Brandon and his partner, is it Deb or Debbie?
Debra Yager.
Debra. Right. Okay. So the two of them, they're in Park City and they're working closely with people in some very, very cool ways, right? But as most of the time when people get into working and being dedicated to helping people, there's usually, there's a genesis, there's a catalyst to their passion. And so, Brandon, yeah, I want to know about that, brother. Like, where exactly did it all jump off for you two?
Well, luckily, I had a grandfather pop up, and he got my older brother and I. He just turned 45 yesterday. Celebrated his birthday. We're super close into business, and we're both coaches, kind of personal growth, transformation coaches. And he got us on this 30 minutes a day program when we were super young. I was probably 11, 12 when it started, right about when my dad lost his job. And so he kind of distracted us with filling our brains with hypnosis and NLP, listening to Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, all the greats,
Yeah.
Brian Tracy. So that gave me such empowerment at a young age, getting that in my 11 to probably 15, 16 years old. He motivated us. He said, "Hey, if you guys give me 30 minutes a day, I'll buy you something at the end of 6 months or a year." And so he really, when you look at school, we're not really motivated to go after rewards. We're motivated to get grades. And if we don't, we fail. Right. And
Right.
so
Right.
it's away from motivation. So that really stuck with me. And as soon as I got out of high school, I got right into real estate at 18. So I built my real estate business. I did that for 17 years, and I hit my glass ceiling when I was probably in my early 20s, hit some success. And then I was like working longer, harder, better, faster, got the grind going, made some success happen. But I was like, there's a massive amount of struggle still. And so it was kind of like I went full circle. And what I had done was I'd gotten away from my personal growth. I'd gotten away from working on myself, improving my language, my just reading more, all the things that, my grandfather had us working on at a young age. And so that's when I hired a coach, Rhonda. And at the time, she's making 20 million a year. And I was like, I need to know what this woman's doing. She's exquisite leader. And she said, "Brandon, you're the problem in your business." And when someone like that tells you, you listen. She
Sure.
like
Sure.
metaphorically, she smacked me upside the head basically. And
Yeah.
I needed that in my early 20s.
Well, brother, I gotta know just a little bit more about Pop Pop, man.
Yeah.
Like what kind of man was he that he was like into that? Because when I think about my grandfather, and they were like the most stoic generation, right? It was very much like, don't complain, shut up, handle your business. And I respect that. I respect it. And God, I love him, right? But there wasn't a whole lot of communication about tapping into the RAS of our body's biological focus and anything like that. It was just like, work is work, handle it, be a man, that's it. And it was like, huh. So who was Pop Pop? Like how was he in tune with that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Oh, I was born on the East Coast, and I come from a background of farmers, kind of ranchers. So my dad was in agriculture, my grandfather was in agriculture and worked for a big company. And he was fascinating because he sat in between research and development as a scientist and marketing and sales. And so he worked for a big company, DuPont Agrochemicals, and it was a huge company in the 50s and 60s. That's kind of where my dad and I butt some heads with organic farming, regenerative farming versus, spraying toxic stuff all over our food. So, but my grandfather, because he was such a leader, he was always working on himself. He had to interpret what the scientists were doing to the sales guys and the marketing guys. So he's very much a leader in communication. And that was one of the biggest things he taught us is just plan ahead, learn how to communicate at the deepest level, and leave people better than you find them. And that was some of my grandfather's best teachings. I mean, he taught us so many things. He was very much like, it was kind of like rich dad, poor dad for me. Grandfather was like, wealthy in mindset, and my dad didn't quite have that personal growth. So it was a really great contrast between my dad and having pop up. I had a grandfather like yours too, my dad's dad,
Okay.
hard
Yeah.
worker, hardworking family, Kansas dry crop farmers. And yeah, so he just had attention and care into, one of the most powerful things. I swear, he just hypnotized my brother and I to get into business at a very young age. He said, Brandon, whether you choose to go to college or not, school alone will not be enough to be successful at life. And it was so true. Because when I got out of high school, I was like, I knew immediately I was done with sports. I was done beating up my body, playing volleyball, water polo, basketball. I was just done with that. I jumped right into real estate. And no one in my family was in real estate, but it had been a lineage, kind of a generational thing back in the past. And he just set us up with the values and the virtues of working on yourself. And Jim Rohn said it best: work harder on yourself than you do your job. And that's what he instilled in us. So
Yeah,
that's
man.
where it made that quick jump and just acceleration into real estate, running my own business. It gave me that edge.
Sure. Yeah, and I love, Jim Rohn. One of his quotes was, well, his mentor was telling him, Mr. Schoaf. It's Schoaf
Shof,
or
yeah.
I
Shof.
say it wrong every time, but he told him, "Become a millionaire for what it will make of you, what you will become in that process." That's the gist of it, is that it wasn't about the dollars, it was that
Right.
process, and to attain that level, you will be a certain kind of a person, and so I appreciate that challenge. So when you're in your early 20s, right? And then, all right, so you've got this mega smack in the head, as you put it, about you being the issue, right? You're the issue, and you had gotten away from working on yourself. And so what was turning that corner like, right? Did you just go back to what you had already kind of been conditioned by pop? I mean, was the lessons already kind of inside of you and you just kind of gotten away from it?
Yeah, pretty much. It was a story I'd been telling myself where you get good at something and then you kind of go away from it. And I was hustling, grinding in real estate. I was making sales. I was learning how to communicate shortly after I got my real estate broker's license. And so, it was it, and I knew I needed to hire a coach because I was very motivated by money because when I was 11, I saw dad, we saw money and then dad got laid off. And then it was this struggle that was this energy in the family, which gave my brother and I both incredible drive. And just because of that struggle, deep down I kind of knew at some level I was going to have to take care of the family. So there was this massive drive for motivating toward money, right? To make a lot of money, make relationships happen, network, just grow, right? And when I met Rhonda, I thought she was just going to open up her business in a box to me. I changed my real estate brokerage to a flat fee model, kind of took it to an online model, doing high volume, and I just hadn't broken that $1 million a year model yet. And I was super driven to hit that. And she's like, Brandon, take all these NLP trainings, these neuro linguistic programming. And that's like Earl Shroff, all the greats pretty much learned NLP at some level, and
Mhm.
then they put it into their own language, right? Jim Rohn, especially, Brian Tracy. And, that's what I did as I went and took my first training, and I realized, wow, like how I hadn't gone deep, like my personal growth, reading books. He had a listening to cassettes and all kinds of different things, but I never really went deep into what are some of these subconscious blocks? What are some of these limitations, these beliefs, fear that you adopt from mom and dad, you adopt from our upbringing, 0 to 7 years old in the imprint period. We just growing up, you're a sponge. So you soak up the environment, the energy, right? The good and the challenging. And that's when I realized like I just had a lot of limiting beliefs around money.
Okay.
Dad's scarcity, it wore off on me. And I remember the first time I bought a brand new car in five, and my dad was like, what do you think money grows on trees? And it's just like
Mm,
that kind of installation. It was hard for my dad was proud, but it was hard for him to say it. He was a tough
sure.
father, Vietnam vet, beautiful man, great relationship, taught me so many things, an incredible father, like a great leader. That money and business came from Pop Up. And that
Wow.
was having that, work ethic and drive from dad, the discipline, but then kind of this business, personal growth mindset teaching as my mentor. That's really what I needed. And so Rhonda, she was like, I just looked up to Rhonda because I was like, I had no idea I was going to afford to pay her to coach me. Huge fee. And then she just opened up this business in a box, but it was so much more than that. It was a process of how to be a better business owner, how to think differently, critical thinking. And once I went to my first training, I got out of an unhealthy relationship and I was drinking way too much. I gained 42 pounds. I just let myself go for a couple years in that kind of just a comfortable relationship that I think a lot of people get into. I cut it cold turkey. We were engaged. And as soon as I got back from my training, I said, hey, you should come take these trainings with me. Let's get our life back together. Let's like get healthy. Let's reconnect. And she wanted nothing to do with it. And
Okay,
so
so
that's when I said,
you gave it a shot. You didn't just yeah,
yeah,
so
oh yeah. No,
well,
it was one of those relationships where you break up, you get back together, you break up. And I knew I floated out 5 years and I saw divorce, divorce, divorce in a meditation. I'm like, I'm not going to do this. And so she wanted nothing to do with personal growth. And that's a huge value. That's one of my number one values. Like Deborah and I, we value working on ourselves and transformation so much. I mean, we're a product of what we teach and how we live our life.
well,
And
let me
so,
ask you, Brandon. I wanna know, like, was how was life at that juncture? Like, was it all right? I ask this is a bit of a loaded question because sometimes when it's not so bad, it's almost worse than falling to fucking pieces. Like, I'm almost thankful that I hit rock bottom and there was no other way to describe it. There was no, wiggle room on how I hit rock bottom. There was no other way. I was wanted and I had got, I was a mess. My body was in pieces. And so I feel when sometimes people are just like comfortable and things aren't that bad, that's worse because they'll limp along. And so I want to know, you're in that relationship. Was it kind of like that? And you had the opportunity show up with Rhonda, and then you realized, that things, are maybe worse than they were. I want to know what the condition was like then.
yeah, like with Rhonda's coaching, it was definitely like this mastermind. So it was wanting to up level just you as a business owner, a bunch of us real estate guys. And that's the that's the thing. It was just like I'm bouncing along the bottom. It was comfortable, but it was unconscious as hell.
Mm.
And the people I was around, I realized I have my older brother, Aaron James. He was like, he hung out with us one night and he's like, what are we doing? Like, is this your group of friends? He straight up called me out. And I'm so grateful for that because he saw the shadow that I needed to see. But what he really called me out is he called me out in my health. And I was coping and I was numbing, drinking, smoking, right? All this stuff that just being an athletic sports guy and then letting myself go and being with a person who was okay with that. That's
Mm.
the difference. It was like embracing the unconsciousness instead of saying, hey, maybe we should go to the gym together. Maybe we should
Right.
get get healthy again.
Well,
We just drank too
but they
much.
tell you that it's
Drinking's
okay.
awful. Yeah,
They did well, yeah, yeah, it's 100% poison, but I think
it
that
is.
it's the sneaky complacency that I've just become it just grosses me out, man. It freaks me out, and I'm like, I forever have this, itch, like, I
Yeah,
cannot like, if I were to be sitting there sitting and doing what I was doing, with my group of friends, and, it might be normal sitting around having beers and, I don't know, saying the same stupid jokes that we said last week, like, that's all very normal, but now I've kind of turned into the type of person where I'm like, "Man, I just can't live like that, man. It freaks me out." And so
yeah,
I want to I want to get out of that. So you had also talked about like, the motivation in school and how it was kind of, there was that motivation that was negative, right? It's like if you don't go to school and you get bad grades, you have to pay the consequences. But Pop kind of dangled something in front of you. He said, I'll reward you if you do this thing with me,
absolutely.
right? If you go through this. And so how do you feel about that, right? Maybe like the carrot on the end of the stick, and then also, the scary cat that you gotta run away from as a mouse. Like, well, how do you feel about motivation being a person that's so highly tuned, right?
Well, we are so programmed in our society to focus on what we don't want, and we use it in our language. So, like, literally, we say, don't run in the house, don't get bad grades, don't. The unconscious mind can't process negatives, right? So, if I said,
Yes.
don't think of a purple rhino, what are you thinking about?
Right. Right.
A purple rhino.
Yeah, purple
And so
rhino, yeah.
we're programmed for this. And so that's really, we don't realize language. When you change your language, you can live a different world, and you live in a different world. It's all frequency, it's all vibration, it's resonance. And neurolinguistic programming is just the science of communication. And that's all it is how do you communicate better with yourself? And then how do you speak the language, which is frequency, into others, right? And have them change their language so that you're more focused on what you want. Just like the reward pop up dangled. I think I got a mountain bike, was my first reward. My brother got one of those big JVC boom boxes. It was hilarious. And it's like you're going after a goal instead of going away from the pain, or the suffering, or the poverty. Or so many people, instead of focusing on money, they focus on getting out of debt. there's
Mm,
there's only a few ways to do this. The only way I know to make debt disappear is make more money and stop spending money.
sure.
So,
Right.
that's a big piece of it right there. It's just how we motivate our children. How do we motivate people? That's one of the biggest things I think that we really miss and we struggle at. And that comes down to our language. What are we focused on? Because whatever you focus on, you'll get. So if it's negative, don't be surprised when you get something negative, because that's what you're focused on.
Right. It's kinda like, I
It's so
mean,
simple.
if you're a sports guy and you're in Park City, I'll use like a skiing thing here. It's like, don't you're going down a chute and you're like, you see those rocks and you're like, all I
Yeah.
have to do is just not launch and go that
Yeah.
way. I know
Or
where I need
don't
to
hit a
be. But
tree.
if you glance and lock that thing with your eyes and that's what your focus is on, it's exactly where you'll end up. And I've been there. I'm like, don't land on those rocks. And I'm laid out. It's like a yard sale. I'm like, gosh, like this really happened to me.
It's like skiing in the trees. It's like you don't focus on the tree. You're
Hell no.
focusing on your
Yeah, you gotta
you're
see through
carved in
that thing.
between.
Well,
Exactly.
and I kinda interrupted you in the story because you had just gotten to the part where Deborah came into the picture. So you had bailed on relationship
Yeah.
A.
Yeah.
So you're on to bigger and better things. And so did Deborah also was she also with Rhonda, or was this
No,
a
no.
separate
So
thing?
we actually met at our level 2 master practitioner training in Vegas. She was living in Vegas, I was living in California. And yeah, we met in the training. I was just getting out of that unhealthy relationship between, like within 5 months, I just accelerated my life. Like the first training I went to, I put $100,000 of commissions in escrow within 60 to 90 days. Like, just money soared. I felt confident. I think what I realized when I was coping and numbing, I think so many people do this in relationships where they're not confident and courageous enough to say the things they need to say, speak the truth. And I wasn't doing that. And so once I finally did that, cut that relationship off, went to my next training, and I met Deb there. And I saw this beautiful woman sit in the back, and she was kind of hiding herself, and she was getting out of an unhealthy relationship too. So we were both kind of there working on each other, which I mean, that's the kind of person I wanted to attract, someone who would actually want to be there instead of I'm like, got to drag them to work on themselves and just want to be a better human. And, we dated for a little bit right there. And like, we moved pretty quick. I mean, within 2 months, 3 months, we were living together. I said,
Yeah.
and she has her own story of, she was an ex-stripper. She was addicted to drugs. I mean, she did all
Yeah.
kinds of crazy stuff. The underground world of Vegas. She has just a wild story that I was
Yeah.
fascinated by that life, because I just was curious of the stories, because I was like, I just did not grow up this way. Tell me more. Tell me more.
Well, I lived
And
in Vegas
so
for 11. I was in that, brother. I was in Vegas for
where you
11
did your,
years. And
you
so,
know,
that town has a finite timeline, and I
yeah,
had buddies that they were there like 30 minutes. I'm like, "Get out. You are
yeah,
going down, brother." So, I kinda look at it like I did all right. I did a decade, but yeah, but that town, what people miss is that everything is available to you. You can spend all of
everything.
your time at the Red Rocks. and being just a magnificent person, or you can go do blow and everything else in the world. You wanna buy a baby? I'll get you a baby. Like, this is this is messed up stuff,
It
that
is.
goes on, and so but yeah, it can be interesting at the same time, a serious trap. So the 2 of you, you joined forces and then alright, so I wanna know more about, like, your specific developments, right? Because 'Cause you've kinda talked about, like, the larger approaches in LP, right? And so, subconscious work, and then, of course, motivational, and you mentioned the sales guys and all this stuff, but how is you and Deborah's work, like, what does that look like specifically?
Well, the biggest thing is she like was really just dying to change her life, and I said, look, one of the most important things is environment. It's like if you want to get out of the environment, heal. She had a lot of healing to do, a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse. And I said, come live with me in California. And that's when our healing journey began. The next 2 years from 2013 to 2014, it was just literally practicing everything we learned at level 1 and 2, and she was like my client. I was literally practicing tools, techniques, language. And if I wasn't doing that with her helping, and she was helping me equally as much, I'd be using language and just different conscious language tools, patterns in my real estate business, getting better at sales, get her better at building rapport and connecting with people, building relationships. And so those two things, I grew my real estate company. And then I realized I love doing personal, like I love being a transformation person who can facilitate growth and transformation in someone else. And that's what she wanted to do. Deep down, she wanted to be a coach. She wanted to be a coach and she knew that. And I think we're both pretty intense people. Like when we get on stage and we do our thing, we're kind of like hold people accountable, but we also have compassion. We're in our hearts. And like, if you want to change, you can change. You got to have the right people. You got to be in the right container to do that. And so that's really what we've just perfected over the last 12 years, being together for almost 13 now, is just beautiful, intimate retreats where we're bringing in biohacking and health peace. We get out in nature. We hike all around Utah here now. And we built a really successful company in Austin, Texas. So we started doing live events. We did live events all through 2020. I mean, we didn't stop doing live events. We didn't let that noise out there. Yet Austin,
Interesting.
Texas, Texas is a fucking great state because of that. So we had hotels sitting vacant. We did contracts. We had 50, 60, 70 people in a room, and really 4X'd our business in 2020. 2021 was
Wow,
an incredible year. And that's just because what we were doing, we know and believe was more important than the fear on everywhere you looked. Fear, fear, fear.
right,
And that's one of the most debilitating things that keep people stuck. And that's one of the things Deb overcame so much was fear of getting on stage, fear of speaking her story. The first time she got on a podcast years ago and spoke her whole story, she had like a healing phase afterward because it was the first time she got this stuff out of her body, like she finally spoke
right,
it into existence. And that's what I think we help so many people do is like go share your story. That's why we love podcasts. We love doing interviews. You get the story out there, and that's the first step to healing. You start to heal when you share your real story with authenticity, right? And without the comparison syndrome and the judgment and not truly caring what people think because somebody's always worse than you and they need to hear where you've been and they need to
right,
hear what you've been able to do to get there. So, our next two years together, the first 2 years was super rough. I didn't know it was going to work out. I'm like, I brought this ex stripper home to mom. What's funny about that? Super funny. So when I was like 10,
Pop-Pop would've been cool with it.
he would have been chill as hell. When I was like 10 or 11, it was really young, maybe 9. I had this wild dream where I was like, what if I brought home a stripper to mom? Like, what would mom think? I mean, we come from conservative background. We're not like super religious. I grew up Christian, but the reality, finding spirituality, Christ consciousness, I'm all about, you know, and it was just funny when I did that. And the first time I brought Deb home to meet mom, like we didn't share everything right away. It was like, yeah, she was a performer in Vegas. Didn't get into the details on that. And then later, I have a twin sister, and my Deb goes, I'm going to tell your sister everything because I know it's going to make it back to your mom. And I'm like, all right, whatever, do your thing. And of course, it made it back to mom.
Right, right. Well, it's a good plan of attack, and if there's anything I know about Vegas, people choose their vocational sharing, so I couldn't tell you how many people it's never just one. It's like, well, I'm a day trader and I juggle fire, or, I'm a hostess at Hooters and I also, everything was
Yeah.
always, multi-leveled,
Tin
at the
bar,
time.
entertainment, something like that.
Right. My favorite was that now I remembered what it was. The girl she was a hostess at Hooters, but she also repaired helicopters. And
Wow.
and
Impressive.
I went to her house and there was actually like some like, I don't know what they were, but they looked like they could have been on a helicopter. And I was like, okay, I'll buy it, whatever. Good for you. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, man. So like when you brought her home to your parents, like how whole were the 2 of you in this journey, right? Because I see you now, brother, and it's like you're this shining light of what personal development is, and you can feel it in your energy and everything. But how long would you say you've been firing on all cylinders?
I mean, my life massively shifted since I met Deborah. Like 13 years, we've been incredible life. Like we're just an intense couple and we want to grow. We want to help people. We want to make a lot of prosperity happen for our clients and us. I mean, I made way more money with her than I did on my own. So there was another level of focus and dedication for the two of us. And I mean, my parents welcomed her, and my dad and my dad passed away in 2022, but my dad and Deborah had a great relationship. Like it was great to see my dad like bring her in and love on her the way he did. That was beautiful. And I mean, it's been a great run. Like I definitely know that Deb and I have done past lives together because it just like we fit in like a glove. I held space for her to heal, but she did all the work. Like I don't take any of that credit. Like I remembered, going through techniques and there was just a page of ex-boyfriends and exes and clients. And we're just going one by one, scratching them off the list of just knocking down any trauma, any emotional resolution, anything she needed to get from the relationship so she could heal. I just was like, hey, that stuff is yours. It's not mine. I don't mind working on this with you because it was just fascinating to hear her stories. And a lot of our tools and techniques, you don't have to go into details. You can release emotions, getting up above, getting another kind of a bird's eye view, a perspective. And what most people don't do is they make mistakes, but they don't learn from those mistakes. And the biggest piece that we do is you've got to reframe. If somebody pissed you off and you're angry and you're resentful and you're just that whatever, they were a shitty person to you. Well, what do I want instead of feeling all this anger? I want happiness. I want love. I want compassion, maybe some more patience, maybe some forgiveness for myself. Most people don't know how to turn that around. And that's like the biggest piece to learning is taking a really crappy story that you may have been victimized. And there were some victimized situations of Deborah's life for sure before she met me and turning that into empowerment. That's why we call our podcast Your True Alchemy, because it's about alchemy, the seven
Mm,
stages of alchemy. If you want to transform something, it's pure science. You got to burn it to shit. You
break
got to
it down.
you have to calcinate it. You can't dissolve something and get it to dissolution to coagulation. You literally have to calcinate something. And that's like our life. What are you willing to burn down? Right? What's the behavior you have to burn away? And people don't think of this like you want to gain $1 million, you want to build a successful business. What are you willing to lose? Are you willing to lose a few friends that may not support you along the way? Right. And people don't think about this. And that's why we love alchemy. And so much of our brand is alchemy. We got back from Egypt in December. We went to Egypt for, 3 weeks. And Egypt's a magical place. Like, you want to talk about like just energy and alchemy and what's going on there as far as ancient knowledge, ancient wisdom. You can learn so much from the past and bring it in with modern tools, modern mindset, modern practices, but rituals is a big thing. Like, we love to meditate, breath work is big in our routine and schedule, and just like taking the stuff that ancients knew, whether it was Maya. We're going to Maya in Guatemala this year at the end of the year in November. We take people and we teach them like what we're doing with astrology, numerology, symbology, and we're learning from ancients in these places. So we not only go see and visit esoteric locations, Chichen Itza, we're going to be going to Lake Atalan, and like, we're tapping into these indigenous ways that, quite frankly, we're just now coming back around and like, oh, that's what they did. Let's embrace more of that. That stuff works.
Right.
So it's a
Yeah.
bridge of this stuff. You know what I mean? So it's modern mastery and how to uplevel your communication, how to move through things. The one thing we do as a couple really well, a lot of people have shared this with us, is like we just move through stuff, right? You got a business problem, you got a business challenge. It's like awesome. Like there's gonna be some greatness that comes from this. Like it may be fucked up right now, but there's gonna be some good stuff that comes from this. There's gonna be learnings, and that's we're always looking at how to empower ourselves and we're coaching each other. Couples coach each other, right? And the better you become at coaching each other, I think the deeper relationship you have, the more love, the more balance, and just the more growth you have together.
Sure, man. I want to know, do you have specific experiences or clients or, people that you've helped with, say, substance abuse? Or I'm curious, like, how much, like, trauma work and stuff, and I'm not, like, the trauma guy. I'm not. Like, I'm a future-oriented guy. I'm just curious
Sure.
what your experience
Yeah.
is, like, maybe working with people that have a substance abuse issue. Like, how do you approach it? Do you start from the beginning and, like, try to hammer out that trauma? Like, you're mentioning with Deborah, like, you were kinda going through past relationships. My solution was different. I was much better doing the pop, pop reward kind of future oriented, like, carrot on the end of the stick. So how do you really approach that kind of thing?
I mean, there's a couple techniques. When someone is slammed in and out of trauma for years, we've had clients like I don't want to say I'm some trauma expert, but the coaching tools work. If you work with someone's subconscious mind and they have an absolute unwavering faith and desire to change, you can clear it out. Right? Hypnosis has been around for thousands of years. Hypnosis is one of the most powerful techniques I use on a daily basis. And so people are fragmented when they're in and out of trauma. And, there creates parts of ourselves. We're literally fragmented. And so there's a part of us that's like this fighter part that protects us. And then there's another part that becomes this wounded part. And then sometimes like there's this firefighter part. So that what we're doing in all of these techniques and processes is to become more whole, like more integrated. And then when you are, you think clearly and you're not leaking energy because you can't make a decision because you're split. I don't personally believe like Deb broke through alcoholism. She quit cold turkey. She smoked meth for a year. Like meth, a hard freaking drug, right? And she was able to integrate these parts where part of her wanted to be this bad girl and rage out and, just fuck shit up. And the other part of her wanted to be like this good person and love and have compassion and patience for others and herself. And there's a technique, it's called parts integration. When you integrate parts of you, you become more whole. And I think some of us come into this world, we're a little more fragmented than others from past lives, different belief systems. Generational trauma is a thing. That's epigenetics, it's science. Dr. Bruce Lipton's figured that out decades ago. And so people come in with different experiences. And it's not like what's right or wrong. It's just like, how do you integrate this experience to give you this empowerment of lessons, learning, wisdom, resources, so then you focus on the future. And I'm very future focused. Like I'm all about strategies because strategies is we have strategies for everything we do. So like when we procrastinate, there's a strategy for that. And sometimes we have to wait to do it to get so frustrated with ourselves, right? Or get anxious. And we finally just say, I got to do the thing I need to do. Right. And so
Mhm.
if you can change strategies, Tony Robbins talks about this state change, it's maintaining state change. And if you're letting yourself get down and depressed and sad and just totally stuck, like that's going to have an effect on the results you get. And so those are just emotions. And you can clear out emotions by getting the learnings from why you still feel that. Like, why do we reject some things and go after others? And that's values. Values are what's important to us. Values are what we'll spend time, money, energy, resources to go after or to run away from. And so if we can just
Sure.
become more congruent, more aligned, you think faster, you make better decisions, and you don't like waste all this energy, leaking energy from
Yeah.
just wasted activities. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, I believe in everything you had just mentioned, and I'm curious to know, what would you say is, like, the lowest hanging fruit? Sometimes I've heard that, like, if you change your language first, the language that you choose is kind of the easiest, like, place to start. And then I've heard other people, like, the easiest place to start is to, like, play you know, NLP programming while you sleep, right? Like, so
Yeah, yeah.
you mentioned a lot of approaches. Like, what would your advice be to somebody who's like, man, like, just where can I start small to where I can begin? Like, because
I
this
mean,
is like
language
high level.
is I don't want to say language is easy because sometimes we're so programmed to focus on what we don't want. People don't even realize they say, like, a great example of negative language is I need to, I have to, I must, I should. We're already focused on that's a modal operator. We call it it's a tip off of there's something underneath that language and why I consistently say that, which means I'm not in control of my behavior. And if you're not in control of your behavior, then who is? And so when you say, I need to get a better job, I have to get out of debt, I must get healthy, right? Or that type of language, there's a story underneath that that's motivating us usually away from what we don't want. And what we do is we tend to focus what we don't want and then we get it. And that's the cycle. It's like this pendulum swing where we go really extreme, right? We'll get into something, we go all in, but then we don't stay consistent. So we swing back. I'm all about balance. Like, I don't think, back to kind of like addictions and stuff, you have to want to quit, number one. And
Oh
number
yeah,
two is I don't think it's a disease. It's not a disease. It's a pattern. It's a behavior. It's either genealogical, could be a past life story, and some people, I think, as crazy as it sounds, they're meant to come in here and suffer and struggle. And who am I to say I'm going to transform your life if you don't want to? Like, as long as that, I think they have the will to do it, they will. But if they don't, they won't. And so it's like Henry Ford's quote, whether you think you can or you think you cannot, you're right. And if you
yeah.
really want to do something, you'll find a freaking way. Or if you don't, you'll find an excuse. And so
Oh
Tad
yeah,
taught me this. One of the first things we teach is cause and effect. I'll tell you the number one thing that Rhonda helped me do and Pop Up is take responsibility, take radical self responsibility, stop blaming others. Nobody's coming to fucking save you. Like, I
yeah.
was that way. I started thinking, "Oh, nobody wants to work anymore. I can't hire good agents. Nobody does their job." And that was a story I was telling myself. And the more I kept telling it, the worst I kept finding people. They'd come in for 2 weeks and we'd have a scuffle and they're like, I quit, and it's like, that's the story. Another story was like, oh, I can make all this money, but I can't keep any of it. It's like picking up water with your hands. That's a story. So we have these limitations that are false beliefs. We think they're real, but they're not. Fear isn't
Right.
real. Danger is. Yeah. So you do have to get a hold of your language, and you also have to look at some of these monumental memories in our past, right? Like an example is my twin sister and I. We got held back in the second grade. We were in different classes. They said we weren't maturing, brought us to the same class, second go around of second grade. And, great teacher. She did the best she could. And I just remember my sister and I, like, that was like kind of the start of our fighting. I took that experience as being held back, didn't have a decision, couldn't make the decision. It wasn't my decision to make. It was like, your guys are doing this because this is what we all agree on. So I put the chip on my shoulder and I was like, I'm going to beat the guys that I should be, in the sixth grade with. Right. And so that chip lived with me. And my twin sister took it as like very like lower self-esteem. It attacked her confidence. She shrunk in a way because then and she was great at school, but then she just started to think less than. Her
Mm.
self-worth was really messed up. So there's moments like this in school. Deb has one where like you stand up in front of whatever classroom to read out loud, you stumble over your words, kids laugh, teacher says sit down, right? And then you that's one of Deb's is like you chalk that up as to like I'm too stupid, I'm not worthy enough, so I'm not going to even worry about school. And that's what got her kind of into this wild world of stripping and making money doing what she did. And so we all have that story of like maybe it's business, maybe it's hey, I wasn't good at school. Most entrepreneurs aren't good at school. Like I maybe graduated with a 3.0 out of high school, you know um and I just had the drive to get after it. And I think the biggest thing I look at is so many people are debilitated by fear, uncertainty, doubt. And those three things just keep you stuck. And so you never take action. And like if
Yeah.
if there's majority of people, 90% of people won't take action. The 10% do. And even if you screw it up, you'll get the feedback, reincorporate and go relaunch. And that's business.
Yeah. You're not lying, brother. I have a little feather in my cap with my journey. And so as I had, you know, struggled to get sober, and I was an addict and alcoholic most of my life, but one thing I never did is I never blamed anybody else, like, that was one kind of saving
That's
grace
great.
is that I didn't have that element that a lot of people do, and one of the parts of my story was, like, the opioid epidemic, right? I had a doctor give me enough drugs, to kill a rhinoceros, and everybody said, "Oh, it wasn't your fault." Like, people would tell me, like, "Well, that wasn't your fault." And I said, "Well, you know what? I still put the pills into my nose and into my mouth, and I still picked up the bottle." And so that was looking back, it was such a major advantage to when I did decide, to your point, when I had made the decision and I really wanted to get sober and I really wanted to be a better person. When I made that decision, at least I didn't have that like, but it's not really my fault. I didn't play that game.
That's
And
good.
back it was a huge advantage.
Do
But
you
yeah, man,
feel like, let me ask you a question, right? Do you feel like alcohol is a disease? Alcoholism?
no, no.
Okay.
And I have an I had a realization that I kind of made me question that. My mother and my father. My mother's still in active addiction. She's still drinking, still, not well. My father has been sober 13 years. I don't know him. We just reconnected, I guess, like 6 months ago. However, his story was incredibly similar to mine, like, so similar, and I had wondered, and I'm like, "Was I just doomed?" Like, what was it that I was, like, was is it, like, living in my blood? And so how I feel about the answer that I'm about to give you is that there are characteristic traits that I have from my father. I believe that part. Those particular traits make me susceptible to the substance abuse and then parties, right? Like we both
Right.
seem to really enjoy those things. And so the substances really play their role because they work. Smart people get addicted to drugs and alcohol because it works. You used it to numb yourself. It does a damn good job of that, right? It numbs
It
you to
does.
where you can actually watch your life crumble and you're still numb. So, it's not a disease. I've never really been on that train myself.
Cool. Well, and I think it's generational. I think what you just said is really powerful because, like, dad, great grandfather, I know men I've worked with that literally 3, 4 generations, it was in the men that they struggle with drinking. Whether that's a generational thing, I just look at that as a pattern, right? And we have an identity. When we make an identities, I am statements like I am this, I'm a doctor, I'm an attorney, those are serious statements. And so that's when you start to form behavior around the identity. Because once you say, you know, my name is Brandon and I've been an alcoholic for blah, 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 right? Or I haven't drank it. Like you're literally stating what you don't want. Like that's a big piece. And there's some great programs out there, right? Not to knock them, but the reality is like if you have to shove it down and try to stuff it and try to have discipline rule that, there's other ways that you can bring in discipline so it's not such a struggle because then these parts and habits and behaviors they come out and will sabotage. There's only so
Yeah.
long you can stuff down negative emotions, traumas, and we had a doctor recently. She came through our program. She functional medicine person, very eats so clean and healthy, no seed oil. She eats just like Deborah and I. And I'm like, when she came through the training, we do retreats. We have chef come in. I'm like, man, this woman's eating really healthy. I'm like, how is she 50 pounds overweight? And what people don't realize, is trauma is it's inflammatory. Your body's inflamed, just like alcohol does this, right? We drink every once in a while and I feel like shit, but I've got some protocols to take that get that toxins out. Like if we want to let our hair down and the body's inflamed with trauma that's seated deep in the subconscious. It's not just in the mind, it's in the body. Like trauma is stored holographically. And
Mm.
so at age 5, we uncovered in some work that she had been abused by her grandfather. And then we find out it's not only her, it was her mom and her mom's sister. Right. And so hurt people hurt people. And so that's something that just like, there's so much sexual abuse that's coming out now that people are realizing like that's a generational thing. That's something that's seated there that you can recorrect that. You can work on that so it doesn't have to be the same generational, hey, let's pass down these crappy traits. Like epigenetics is a thing. And
Yeah.
so she literally released this, got the learnings, and she was so empowered. She ended up posting this stuff on Facebook. She did a podcast with Debra. You know, she's lost 50 pounds in less than 6 months. And
Wow.
guess what? Zero protocols. She started working out a lot more, but she really didn't change anything. We've seen
Yeah.
people shed 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds just releasing trauma. Because if you think about it, your body's trying to heal something that is really deep inside. And the only way it knows how to do it, a lot of times with, I've worked with a lot of different people that have gained weight and they're trying to metaphorically put on weight to protect them from the outside world because there's a deep seated, a fear, an anger, there's a guilt, there's a shame, there's something so deep that it's created almost like a part of them that needs to protect themselves from others. I mean, I've
That's
seen super
wild.
healthy people go to yoga every day and they're not losing weight and it's trauma, right? It's a
Yeah.
significant emotional event. I don't want to prop trauma up. It doesn't have to be big T trauma. It could be little stuff. The bottom line is the unconscious mind. You could do a clear sweep and you can really go through events, get the learnings, release emotions, and it doesn't bother you. Then here's how you know. You go back into the event, you actually go back into the memory and you don't have any emotions. It's neutral. That's how you know you're
Mm.
clearing out past stuff in the past, you
Well,
know?
so so is that you do these events and that you're still doing these events? I mean, what's going on lately
Yeah.
for you? Like, is this just, I mean, you've COVID didn't even stop you, right? So like
No, it
what
did
does it
not.
look like? Is it in Park City or like how does somebody get
Yeah.
involved?
Yeah, we do. We have a team of coaches online that people book sessions with and they do breakthrough right over Zoom. So we've got a team of master coaches. And then we really work with a lot of entrepreneurs and health practitioners, people that want to become coaches. I'd say the biggest gap is in functional medicine and just in general practitioners. They don't learn mental and emotional processes and how to communicate that, right? They expect patient compliance, but they don't get it. And so
Mhm.
when people drop off treatments, they drop off protocols, it's because there's mental blocks, there's emotional stuff under the hood that the
Yeah,
current medical system doesn't really address. That's the
yeah.
real kind of the sadness in it is vets is a big one, right? PTSD. We're not really taking care of our vets the way we could. I've worked with a lot of men. And so people want to come in and they want to get certified in these techniques. So we do intimate retreats. We have a 5-day level one. We have 3-day kind of starter events where people learn sales, they learn how to communicate, coaching, and then we take it all the way up to speaker training. So we help people get on stage, communicate really clearly, have a great signature talk. We perfect it, and so each of the levels, you're breaking through your stuff at level one, you're mastering the tools at level two. And then at speakers, it's like a speaker boot camp. You're basically able to get in front of stages, podcasts, and share your story with confidence and also deliver a message that actually has people wanting to work with you. And that's really because a lot of people jump on stage or they do podcasts, but there's like that little bit of inauthenticity of like, have they cleared out everything that's getting in the way to reach their highest potential? And so that's a big piece of our program is like really diving into the stuff this is not surface level. This is like deep subconscious work. And when you do that work, you become a completely new person. So yeah, so our retreats are, pretty it's pretty intimate. I mean, it's somewhere between 15, sometimes 20 people.
That's
And
awesome.
we just dive deep. You get to see a lot of times entrepreneurs. I remember sitting my first training as a broker and I'm like, why am I sitting down doing this like practitioner work? But the reality is, you can't get out of your own problems until you become aware. And so it's like if you and I were to sit down, Ryan, you get to be the coach, I'm the client, we work on something, then we switch, right? So it's a lot of hands on experience, scripts, follow the script, you get a result, right? And then you do this enough, then it's an intuitive kind of a beautiful process where you can weave in multiple tools, multiple techniques. So you can make more money as a coach, you get way better results because you basically can guarantee things will release as long as the client's ready to release it. Right. And that's where it just
Right,
goes back to taking responsibility. If I have a problem, I'm going to let it go. As long as I'm willing to let it go and not hold on to it because I still want to be a little victim deep down inside, right?
right.
Or I still have this fearful, scared part, you'll let it go. Like it's like you can't not let stuff go because you're working within the subconscious. Your conscious mind is kind of out of the process. You don't have to talk about trauma. You just it's a way of like being able to rewrite the story of someone's, obstacle or block or a major event in their life.
That's awesome, man. It's holistic for sure, right? And I can
It
appreciate
is.
what you said about our current system's not holistic, not even by a long shot. And so you doing that kind of work, brother, is it's important, right? And so what's like
It is.
one
Thank you.
nugget that you would drop for somebody who might be feeling like they've got another level inside them, like they want to experience that, but they're not sure what to do. What kind of wisdom could you bestow?
Yeah. I think a big piece of our belief systems, I think a lot of people are stuck right now. They're stuck in depression. They're stuck in apathy. A lot of people, and I think this is a part of the programming of what our current construct of how we think people heal. I believe we have everything inside to heal. We just haven't activated it. We haven't turned it on, right? You turned it on and said, "Hey, I'm not gonna drink, right? I'm gonna quit this unhealthy habit, right? That's sabotaging my life." I think belief systems is a huge piece of that. I think changing your identity is massive, right? You have to become a new person. It's not immediately obvious, but if you want to change, you have to change something. And I think that a lot of people feel stuck that they can't heal, that they believe they can't be a different person. It's like, oh, this is just my life, right? Is the card I've been
Right.
the hand I've been dealt. And that's just the biggest crock of BS because if you truly want to change, you can. You know,
Yeah.
it's not always gonna be easy, but the biggest thing is like, I would say most people are in their way. I was in my own way when Rhonda was like, smack, right? And Deborah still does it when I get in my own way. She's like, "You're in your own way. What are you trying to control?" And I think that's where a coach or having a mentor is truly beneficial. And we have coaches, we have so many people that is in our community that we all work together, we mastermind, we help each other because we want to lift. Well, rising tide rises all boats. And I think the biggest thing is a lot of people have fear of who will I become if I'm better, if I become more so, if I grow my life, grow my bank account, will my friends still be there? And the reality is we're not fixed human beings. We're constantly in motion. And when you evolve and you grow, you're going to grow to a new set of people. You're going to grow to a new set of friends and influences. And so I think the biggest thing is change your belief systems. Like just open up to the belief that you can transform, you can change. And I think so many people think they can't, especially healing, and I think working with a lot of practitioners over the years and entrepreneurs, the practitioners, we need to help our practitioners heal. There's a lot of doctors, there's a lot of professionals that actually need to heal in order to go help others heal. But I still believe everything is inside of us. Like everything we need is inside of us. It's not like NLP or any of this growth mindset is new. It's been around for thousands of years, maybe longer. And
Yeah.
and we're just activating it inside of us. And then we're using it in a process so that we can get consistent, specific results, desired outcomes.
It's awesome, brother. All right. Well, let everybody know where we can find you. What's the best place to get involved?
Yeah, check out Your True Alchemy. We have yourtruealchemy.com, and we also have, our podcast is Your True Alchemy, and then we have jaegertraining.com as well.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll have everything in print for everybody. All right, brother. I appreciate your time. This has been another episode of The Next Fix, y'all.